After inheriting $10 million, my daughter-in-law pushed me down the stairs, hoping I wouldn't survive. My son lied to the police, saying I fell by accident. But when they came back to finish what they'd started, the person sitting beside my bed made them freeze in terror. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. I'm Eleanor Davidson, 68 years old, and just 2 weeks ago, I was supposedly the luckiest woman in America. My late brother Harold had shocked everyone by leaving me his entire fortune. $10 million, just like that. I should have known that kind of money would bring out the worst in people, especially my own family. But let me back up to where this nightmare began. It started 3 days after the lawyer's visit. Jessica, my daughter-in-law, suggested I move in with them temporarily while we sorted out the inheritance details. She was all smiles and soft touches on my arm. Mom, Eleanor, she said in that syrupy voice she saves for when she wants something. It just makes sense. We can take care of you, and you can take care of us. My son Michael nodded eagerly from across their marble kitchen island. It's perfect, Mom, we'll be one big happy family. The way his eyes gleamed when he said it should have been my first warning. I'd raised Michael to be better than this. His father, Tom, and I had taught him about integrity, about earning what you get. But somewhere along the way, Jessica's influence had turned him into someone I barely recognized. Someone who saw his mother's inheritance as his ticket to an easy life. The first week went smoothly enough. Jessica cooked my favorite meals. Michael checked in every morning to ask how I slept. They were putting on a performance, and I almost felt guilty for the suspicious thoughts creeping into my head. Then came the papers. Michael spread them across the dining table with the confidence of a lawyer, though he'd never even finished college. Mom, we need to talk about estate planning, he said. Jessica's been researching the tax implications. I slipped on my reading glasses and skimmed the stack, power of attorney forms, healthcare directives, and buried in the middle, transfer agreements that would hand over control of my inheritance to them. For management purposes, this seems awfully complicated, I said, setting down my coffee cup. Maybe I should have my own lawyer look these over. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Jessica's smile tightened. Oh, Mom. Eleanor, she said sweetly, that would just slow everything down. We're family. You can trust us. Double quotes trust. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. I thought about how quickly they'd cleared out the guest room, not out of kindness, but to make room for their golden goose. I'll think about it, I said, folding the papers neatly and tucking them away. That night, I heard them arguing through the thin walls, Jessica's voice sharp with anger, Michael's defensive. I couldn't make out everything, but I caught enough. Stubborn old woman. We need that money now. She won't live forever anyway. My blood ran cold. This wasn't about taking care of me. This was about taking everything from me. The next morning, Jessica was all sunshine and coffee, as if she hadn't been plotting my death 12 hours earlier. Good morning, Mom, Eleanor. How did you sleep? She chirped, sliding a plate of perfectly ranged fruit in front of me like a baby, I said, watching her face for tells. In my 30 years as a high school principal, I'd gotten very good at spotting liars, and Jessica was amateur hour compared to the teenagers I dealt with. Wonderful, she said. Michael and I were just talking about those papers from yesterday. We really think it would be best to get everything settled quickly, you know. For your peace of mind, right? The only peace of mind I had was knowing I hadn't signed a single thing. Michael appeared in the doorway, already dressed for work, unusual for someone who normally rolled out of bed at 8:30. Hey, Mom, he said casually. I called my lawyer friend, Marcus Webb. He can see you this afternoon to go over everything. I raised an eyebrow. Marcus Webb was Jessica's cousin, a detail they conveniently forgot to mention. How thoughtful, I said. But I already have a lawyer. Harold's attorney, Mr. Patterson, has been handling everything beautifully. Jessica's coffee cup clattered against the saucer. Oh, but Mom, Eleanor, she said quickly, Mr. Patterson specializes in estate law. You need someone who understands financial planning, tax implications. Family trusts? I interrupted. When did we start talking about family trusts? Michael jumped in before she could answer. It's just an option, Mom, to protect your assets. To make sure the family's taken care of if anything happens to you. I gave him a long, measured look, because in that moment, I realized something was definitely going to happen to me. The way Michael said it, if anything happens to you, so casually, so coldly, made my skin crawl. It was like they were already planning my funeral. I stood up from the breakfast table, suddenly needing space. I think I'll take a walk around the neighborhood, clear my head, I said. Oh, be careful. Mom, Eleanor. Jessica called after me, her voice dripping with false concern. Some of these sidewalks are uneven. We wouldn't want you to fall. Her words made my stomach twist. As I walked down their perfectly manicured suburban street, I pulled out my phone and called Mr. Patterson. Eleanor, he said warmly. How are you settling in with the inheritance? That's what I wanted to discuss, I said. Michael and Jessica are pushing me to sign some documents, power of attorney forms, financial transfers. It all feels very rushed. There was a pause. Eleanor, he said, his tone suddenly serious, I have to advise extreme caution. I've seen too many cases where family members try to gain control of inheritances through seemingly innocent paperwork. Don't sign anything without me reviewing it first. That's exactly what I plan to do, I replied. Good, and Eleanor, be very careful who you trust right now. $10 million makes people do terrible things. When I came back from my walk, Jessica was in the kitchen whispering into her phone. The second she saw me, she hung up. Who was that, dear? I asked lightly. Oh, just my sister, she said quickly. Boring family stuff, but her hands were trembling as she set the phone down. That afternoon, they both conveniently had appointments, leaving me alone in the house for the first time since I'd arrived. I took the chance to do a little investigating of my own. The home office was unlocked. Inside, I found a stack of documents that made my stomach turn, credit card statements showing massive debt, late payment notices, and worst of all, printed articles about inheritance law. The titles were chilling: How to Challenge Mental Competency in Elderly Relatives, Simplifying Power of Attorney Transfers. They weren't just planning to take my money. They were planning to have me declared incompetent if I didn't hand it over willingly. From that moment on, I played the role of the sweet, trusting mother-in-law while quietly preparing my defense. I called Mr. Patterson and scheduled a full mental competency evaluation with a geriatric psychiatrist, something they couldn't challenge later. I also opened a security deposit box at a completely different bank to store my documents safely out of reach, but Michael and Jessica were growing impatient. The pressure ramped up every day. Mom, we really need to move forward with the financial planning, Michael said one night over dinner. Every day we wait costs us money in potential tax liabilities. Us? I asked sweetly. I wasn't aware you had any tax liabilities related to my inheritance. Jessica let out her rehearsed little laugh. Oh, you know what he means. Family finances affect everyone. We're all in this together. I smiled, nodded, and played along. Of course, dear. I understand completely, but inside, I was done playing that night. I called Harold's old housekeeper, Maria Santos. Harold had mentioned her in his will. She'd been like family to him. If anyone knew the truth behind his fortune, it would be her. Mrs. Davidson, Maria said softly when she picked up. I'm so sorry for your loss. Mr. Harold spoke of you often. He was so excited to leave everything to you, Maria, I said. Can I ask you something confidential? Did Harold ever mention being worried about anyone trying to take advantage of me or the inheritance? There was a long pause. Then she said, Mrs. Davidson, Mr. Harold was very specific about his wishes. He left everything to you because he trusted you. He said his nephews had already shown their true colors. They kept asking for money. He didn't want them to get a single penny. My blood ran cold. Harold's nephews, Jessica's brothers, Maria continued. He was especially worried about pressure tactics. He made me promise to tell you, if anyone tries to rush you into financial decisions, you should run the other way. The puzzle pieces were snapping into place. This wasn't just Michael and Jessica's scheme. This was a family conspiracy, and I was the target. The next morning at breakfast, Jessica seemed tense. Her hands fidgeted. Her phone kept lighting up. Expecting someone? I asked, pretending to be casual. Oh, no, she said quickly. Just waiting for a delivery, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Michael had already left for work, claiming he had an early meeting. The house felt different, charged like the air before a thunderstorm. I excused myself to use the bathroom upstairs, but instead, I peeked out the front window. A dark sedan sat parked across the street. 2 men inside. They'd been there for over an hour. My heart started to race. This was it. Whatever they had planned, it was happening today. I grabbed my phone and called Mr. Patterson. I need you to come to Michael's house immediately, I whispered. Something's about to happen. Eleanor, what's wrong? I think they're planning to have me declared incompetent today. There are men outside and Jessica's acting strange. I'm calling the police and heading over right now, he said firmly. Don't sign anything. And don't be alone with them. But it was too late. I heard the front door open and voices in the foyer. Jessica was greeting someone, her tone bright and fake. She's upstairs. She's been acting very confused lately, very paranoid. We're so worried about her mental state. I recognized the second voice instantly. Dr. Richard Steinberg, the psychiatrist Michael had mentioned before. A man I suspected owed them a favor. They were planning to have me committed. Right here, right now. I had maybe 5 minutes before they came upstairs. Just enough time for one last phone call. With shaking fingers, I dialed 911. Double quotes 911. What's your emergency? This is Eleanor Davidson. I'm at 247 Maple Street, and I believe I'm about to be unlawfully committed by family members trying to steal my inheritance. Mom, can you repeat that? My son and daughter-in-law are planning to have me declared mentally incompetent, so they can control my $10 million inheritance. There's a psychiatrist here now, and I believe this is all fraudulent. I could hear footsteps on the stairs. They were coming, Mom. Officers are en route. Can you stay on the line? I'll try. I shoved the phone into my sweater pocket, keeping the line open. Jessica appeared in the doorway with a tall, thin man in an expensive suit. Mom, Eleanor, this is Dr. Steinberg. Michael asked him to come check on you. We've been so worried about your mental state lately. Dr. Steinberg stepped forward, wearing that patronizing, practiced smile. Mrs. Davidson, your family is concerned about some confusion you've been experiencing. I'm here to help. What confusion? I asked calmly. I feel perfectly clear-headed. Jessica's eyes darted nervously. Mom, Eleanor, you've been saying some very strange things, accusing us of trying to steal from you, talking about conspiracies. It's very concerning. Is it concerning that I found articles about mental competency challenges in your office? Or that I discovered your brothers have been pressuring Harold for money for years? Dr. Steinberg pulled out a clipboard. Mrs. Davidson, paranoid delusions are common in elderly individuals, especially during times of stress. I think it would be best if we had you evaluated at a facility where you can get proper care. The sirens were getting closer. I just needed to stall a little longer, doctor. Before we proceed, I'd like to see your credentials. And I'd like to call my own physician for a second opinion. That won't be necessary. Jessica cut in quickly. We've already made arrangements. Arrangements for what, exactly? Dr. Steinberg opened his briefcase and pulled out papers. Mrs. Davidson, we have a 72-hour psychiatric hold for your own safety. The sirens were right outside now. Jessica's face went white as she ran to the window. There are police cars outside, she said, voice rising in panic. I smiled sweetly. Oh yes, I called them. You see, I'm not as confused as you thought. The front door burst open, and heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs. 2 officers appeared in the doorway, followed closely by Mr. Patterson. Mrs. Davidson, are you all right? One officer asked. I'm perfectly fine, officer. But I believe these people were attempting to have me unlawfully committed. In order to gain control of my inheritance, Dr. Steinberg tried to keep his composure. Officers, this woman is clearly delusional. She needs psychiatric care. Mr. Patterson stepped forward, opening his briefcase. Officer, I'm Mrs. Davidson's attorney. She recently passed a comprehensive mental competency evaluation with flying colors. Any attempt to have her committed without proper legal procedure would be fraudulent. Jessica started crying. We were just trying to help her. She's been so paranoid, so confused. Confused enough to call 911 when I suspected fraudulent activity? I asked. Confused enough to hire a lawyer and get a psychiatric evaluation? I'd say my judgment is pretty sound. The second officer examined the papers in Dr. Steinberg's hand. Doctor, these forms haven't been properly filed with the court. This appears to be an illegal detention attempt. Right then, Michael came running up the stairs, still in his work clothes, clearly panicked. What's going on? Jessica called me. She said there were police cars. He stopped dead when he saw the scene. His face shifted from confusion to realization to pure panic in seconds. Michael, I said calmly, I believe you and your wife need to explain to these officers why you thought it was appropriate to try to have me committed. That's when Jessica completely lost it. She's ruining everything. We need that money. Do you know how much debt we're in? Do you know what this inheritance could do for our family? And there it was, the truth, finally out in the open. The police spent the next 2 hours taking statements and examining evidence. It turned out Dr. Steinberg was already under investigation by the medical board for questionable practices, and the commitment papers he brought weren't even legal documents. Blank forms. Michael and Jessica were arrested for attempted fraud and unlawful detention. As they were led away in handcuffs, Jessica was still crying, insisting they'd only been trying to help me, help themselves to my bank account. I muttered to Mr. Patterson as we watched the police cars drive away. Eleanor, you handled this brilliantly. Most people would have been fooled by their scheme. 30 years of dealing with manipulative teenagers taught me a few things about spotting lies, I said, but as I stood in their now empty house, surrounded by the evidence of their greed and deception, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt sad. This was my son, the little boy I'd taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, and stayed up nights worrying about. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost him to greed and desperation. Mr. Patterson drove me to a hotel for the night while we figured out my next steps. In the quiet of that room, I finally let myself feel the full weight of it all. My own family had tried to steal everything from me, and when I refused, they'd tried to have me locked away. The next morning, I got a call from Michael's lawyer. Mrs. Davidson, my clients are prepared to plead guilty to lesser charges in exchange for family reunification, therapy, and a promise not to pursue the inheritance. I almost laughed. A promise not to pursue my own inheritance. How generous of them. They're still your family, Mrs. Davidson. Surely there's room for forgiveness. There's room for many things, I replied. Forgiveness may come eventually. Trust, however, is gone forever. I hung up and called Maria Santos. Maria, I want to see Harold's house. I think it's time I understood exactly what he left me. Harold's estate was magnificent. A sprawling Victorian mansion overlooking the ocean, with gardens that looked like something out of a magazine. Maria gave me a full tour, rooms filled with antiques, a library stocked with first editions, and a wine cellar that probably cost more than most people's homes. Mr. Harold was very specific about this place, Maria said as we stood on the wraparound porch. He said it should be a sanctuary for you, somewhere you could live in peace, without anyone trying to take advantage of you. He knew this would happen, didn't he? She sighed softly. He hoped it wouldn't, but yes, he was prepared for it. That's why he set up the inheritance the way he did that afternoon. Mr. Patterson explained those protections. Harold had been smarter than I'd realized. The inheritance included not only the $10 million, but legal stipulations that prevented anyone from pressuring me to share it. Any family member who attempted to defraud or manipulate me would be permanently cut off from future considerations. He essentially made it legally impossible for them to benefit from pressure tactics. Mr. Patterson said, "The more they push, the more they lose." That night, I stayed in Harold's house, my house now, walking through rooms that felt both foreign and welcoming. In his study, I found a letter he'd left specifically for me. "Dear Eleanor, if you're reading this, then you've likely discovered that money brings out both the best and worst in people. I hope your family proved me wrong. But if they didn't, please know that this house and this money are meant to give you freedom, not burden you with obligations to others. Live your life for yourself. You've earned it." I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into my purse. Harold had given me more than money. He'd given me permission to put myself first. Maybe for the first time in my life, the phone rang. It was Jessica, calling from jail. "Mom, Eleanor, please. We made a mistake. Can you drop the charges? We'll pay you back. We'll do anything." I looked out at the ocean, the waves crashing against the rocks below. "Jessica, the charges are out of my hands now. You committed crimes, and even if I could drop them, I wouldn't. But we're family. Family doesn't try to steal from each other. Family doesn't try to have each other committed. You made your choice when you decided I was worth more to you as a victim than as a mother. Please, we're going to lose the house. We're going to lose everything. Then you'll understand how I felt when you tried to take everything from me." I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow, I'd start figuring out what my new life looked like. Tonight, I just wanted to sit in my beautiful house and be grateful that Harold had loved me enough to protect me, even from my own family. 6 months later, I hosted my first dinner party in the Ocean View dining room. The guests were an eclectic mix: Maria Santos, who'd become more friend than employee, my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, a retired teacher like myself, and Dr. Rebecca Walsh, the psychiatrist who'd conducted my competency evaluation and had since become a trusted advisor. And surprisingly, Michael. My son had spent 3 months in minimum security prison, followed by extensive therapy. His marriage to Jessica hadn't survived the scandal, and he'd lost their house to bankruptcy. But something about hitting rock bottom had brought back glimpses of the man I'd raised. "Mom, this place is incredible," he said, looking around the dining room with its crystal chandelier and antique furniture. "Harold really wanted you to be comfortable. He wanted me to be safe," I corrected gently. "There's a difference." Dr. Walsh nodded approvingly. "It's important to distinguish between comfort and security. Eleanor has built both here." We were halfway through Maria's famous paella when Michael finally brought up what we'd all been avoiding. "Mom," he began carefully, "I know I have no right to ask this, but I want you to know I'm not here because of the money. I'm here because I miss my mother." I studied his face, searching for the tells I'd learned to recognize. But all I saw was genuine remorse and exhaustion. "I miss my son too," I said quietly. "But we can't go back to the way things were, Michael. Too much has happened." "I know," he said softly. "I just hope we can build something new. Something honest." Mrs. Chen, who'd been quietly observing, spoke up with the wisdom of her 83 years. "Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, dear. It's about choosing not to let the past poison your future." After dinner, Michael and I walked along the beach behind the house. The October air was crisp, and the waves provided a soothing soundtrack to our difficult conversation. "I keep thinking about Dad," he said. "About what he would say if he knew what I'd done. Your father would be heartbroken," I said honestly. "But he'd also believe in second chances." "He always did." He hesitated. "Jessica blames you for everything, you know. She tells anyone who'll listen that you're a vindictive old woman who destroyed her family." I almost smiled at that. "And what do you tell people?" "I tell them I destroyed my own family by getting greedy and losing sight of what actually matters." We walked in silence for a while, both lost in thought. Then Michael stopped and turned to face me. "Mom, I need to tell you something about why we really needed the money so badly." I braced myself for another excuse, another manipulation. But what came next surprised me. "Jessica has a gambling addiction," he said. "Credit cards, online betting, casino trips. I've been covering her debts for 3 years, refinancing the house, borrowing against my retirement. I was drowning. And when we heard about your inheritance, it felt like salvation. Why didn't you just ask for help?" "Because I was ashamed," he admitted. "Because I knew you'd tell me to leave her and I thought I could fix it myself. I thought if we could just get access to some of your money, we could pay everything off and start fresh." I felt a familiar pang of maternal concern, followed quickly by anger at how he'd handled it all. "So instead of asking for help, you decided to steal from me and have me committed?" I know how it sounds. I know how wrong it was. But I wasn't thinking clearly. I was desperate. And Jessica kept saying you'd never miss the money, that you'd understand once we explained everything. "Michael," I said quietly, "if you'd come to me honestly, explained the situation, asked for help with Jessica's addiction, I would have helped you. Not with millions of dollars, but with real solutions, therapy, legal advice, financial planning." He nodded miserably. "I know that now. But Jessica said you'd just judge us, that you'd never approve of her anyway." "I didn't approve of her because I saw how she was changing you," I said. "But I would have supported you if you'd asked for help instead of trying to take everything from me." As we walked back toward the house, I felt something shifting inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but the possibility of it. Michael had made terrible choices, yes. But they came from desperation and poor judgment, not pure greed. "Where do we go from here?" he asked as we reached the porch steps. "Very slowly," I said. "With honesty, with boundaries, and with the understanding that trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild." He nodded. "I'd like to try. If you'll let me." I looked at this man who was my son, who'd betrayed me, who was now asking for a chance to earn his way back into my life. It would have been easier to cut him off completely, to enjoy my wealth and my beautiful house without the complication of family drama. But as I looked up at the stars over the ocean, I thought about Harold's letter. He'd given me the freedom to choose my own path, and I chose to leave the door open, just a crack, for the possibility that my son might one day find his way back to being someone worthy of trust. "We'll see," I said finally. "We'll see." 2 years after the inheritance nightmare, I thought the worst was behind me. I was wrong. The doorbell rang on a Tuesday morning while I was tending to Harold's rose garden, now mine. Through the security camera Harold had wisely installed, I saw a woman in an expensive suit holding a briefcase. "Mrs. Davidson, I'm attorney Sarah Mitchell from Blackstone and Associates," she said when I opened the door. "I represent Jessica Stevens regarding her wrongful conviction case." Jessica. Apparently, 3 months in minimum security hadn't taught her anything about accountability. I let Ms. Mitchell into the foyer but didn't offer her coffee. "Some people simply don't deserve hospitality, Mrs. Davidson." My client maintains that she was pressured into pleading guilty. Due to inadequate legal representation, the lawyer began. "We have new evidence suggesting the entire incident was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion." I almost laughed. "A misunderstanding? Your client tried to have me illegally committed to steal my inheritance." "That's one interpretation," she said smoothly. "We believe Jessica was genuinely concerned about your mental health and acted out of love, not greed." "Love doesn't forge commitment papers," I said dryly. Miss Mitchell opened her briefcase. "We have statements from Dr. Steinberg claiming he was misled about your condition by Jessica's husband, that Jessica herself was a victim of Michael's manipulation." Interesting strategy. Throw Michael under the bus and paint Jessica as another victim. Dr. Steinberg lost his medical license 6 months after our incident for conducting unauthorized psychiatric evaluations. I reminded her. "His statements aren't exactly credible. Nevertheless, we're prepared to file an appeal," she said. "However, Jessica would prefer to resolve this privately. She's willing to publicly apologize and accept responsibility for her part in the misunderstanding in exchange for your support in overturning her conviction." The audacity was breathtaking. She wanted me to help clear her record after she'd tried to destroy my life. And what exactly would I get out of this arrangement? I asked. Family reconciliation. Peace of mind. The knowledge that you've helped a young woman learn from her mistakes. I walked to the window overlooking the ocean, buying time to process this latest manipulation attempt. Jessica hadn't learned a thing except new ways to dodge consequences, Ms. Mitchell. I said finally. Please tell your client that I wouldn't help her if she were drowning in my swimming pool. Good day. After the lawyer left, I called Mr. Patterson. They're appealing the conviction. I told him, and want my help overturning it. Absolutely not, he said firmly. Eleanor, Jessica's conviction stands as protection for you. If it gets overturned, it sets a precedent that family members can attempt financial fraud without real consequences. That evening, Michael called. Mom, did someone from Jessica's legal team contact you? They did, I said. I told them exactly what they could do with their appeal. Good, he said. Jessica called me to ask if I'd support her. She actually thought I might help her after she blamed everything on me during the divorce. Are you tempted? I asked carefully. Hell no. Sorry, Mom, but absolutely not. Jessica made her choices. She can live with the consequences. I was proud of him for that. His therapy was clearly working. 3 months later, the appeal was denied. Jessica's new lawyer hadn't been able to overcome the mountain of evidence against her. But victory felt hollow when Michael showed up at my door, looking uneasy. Mom, he said. There's something you need to know. Jessica's been contacting your neighbors, telling them stories about you. My stomach dropped. What kind of stories? She's claiming you've become paranoid and vengeful, that you're using your money to destroy people's lives. Mrs. Chen mentioned it to me when I ran into her at the grocery store. A familiar chill ran through me. What exactly is she saying? That you're unstable. That the family tried to help you and you had them arrested out of spite. She's trying to turn the community against you. The next day proved Michael right. At the farmer's market, people avoided eye contact. Conversation stopped when I approached. Mrs. Chen was notably absent from her usual vegetable stand. I decided to confront it head on. I drove to Mrs. Chen's house and knocked on her door. Eleanor, she said, her usual warmth replaced by polite caution. May I come in? I think we need to talk. She hesitated, then stepped aside. I suppose we should. Inside her living room, surrounded by family photos and the soft scent of jasmine tea, I faced her directly. Someone's been telling you stories about me, I said. Mrs. Chen looked uncomfortable. Eleanor, I don't want to get involved in family drama. What did Jessica tell you? She said you've become vindictive since inheriting the money, that your family tried to help you manage your finances and you had them arrested for it. She seemed very upset, very sincere. I felt my temper rising but kept my voice steady. Did she mention trying to have me committed with fraudulent paperwork? Or the fact that she stole from me for months before I even knew about the inheritance? Mrs. Chen's expression shifted. She didn't mention those details. I imagine not, I said quietly. Mrs. Chen, in the 2 years you've known me, have I ever seemed vindictive? Have I ever used my money to hurt anyone? She shook her head slowly. No, you've been nothing but generous and kind, Mrs. Chen said softly. Then why would you believe Jessica's story over your own experience with me? I asked. She sighed. Because family situations are complicated. Sometimes good people do desperate things when money is involved. I spent the next hour calmly explaining the real story, showing Mrs. Chen the court documents I always kept in my purse, the police reports, the proof of Jessica's fraud. By the end of it, she looked ashamed and furious. I should have talked to you first, she said. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. It's not your fault, I told her gently. Jessica's very convincing when she wants to be, but the damage was spreading. Over the next week, I learned that Jessica had contacted nearly half the neighborhood, spinning her tale of victimization. Some people believed her. Others stayed neutral. A few, thankfully, dismissed her completely. The situation reached a breaking point when I found graffiti on my garden gate. Rich witch. That was the moment I decided Jessica needed to learn what real consequences felt like, the kind that couldn't be charmed away. I called my private investigator, Patricia Stone, whom Mr. Patterson had originally recommended for vetting household staff. I explained everything and asked her to compile a full dossier on Jessica's activities since her release. I want to know everywhere she's been, everyone she's talked to, and every lie she's told, I said. Patricia's report was eye-opening. Jessica hadn't just been spreading lies about me, she was running a full-blown con. She was telling potential employers her conviction was the result of false charges brought by a vindictive mother-in-law. She'd convinced a local charity that she was a victim of elder abuse who needed financial help. Most disturbing of all, she'd been dating a widower named Frank Morrison, claiming she was a nurse wrongfully accused of patient abuse by a difficult family. Eleanor, Patricia said as she handed me the file, this woman is a habitual liar. She's not trying to rehabilitate her image, she's actively defrauding people. Frank Morrison was 74, recently widowed, and according to Patricia's research, quite wealthy. Jessica was playing the long game again, looking for her next mark. I made a decision that some might call vindictive. I preferred to think of it as protective. I arranged an accidental meeting with Frank at the coffee shop where Patricia had observed him and Jessica together. It wasn't difficult to strike up a conversation. He was lonely, eager to talk, and I was a sympathetic fellow widow. I'm actually seeing someone new, he mentioned after 20 minutes. A lovely woman named Jessica. She's been through such a difficult time. Oh, how wonderful, I said with practiced warmth. What's her last name? Stevens. Jessica Stevens. She's a nurse. Very caring. I kept my expression neutral. That's nice. How did you meet? At a grief support group. She lost her husband in a terrible accident. And then her mother-in-law made false accusations against her. She had to go through a legal nightmare, but she's so brave about it. The lies were even more elaborate than I'd expected. A dead husband now, grief support groups, false accusations. Jessica had reinvented herself completely. Frank, I said carefully, this might sound strange, but I think you should be very careful. There have been cases of people targeting widowers with false stories. He looked skeptical. Jessica's not like that. She's genuine. I took a breath. This was the hard part, Frank. I need to tell you something and you're not going to want to hear it. Then I told him everything. Who I was. Who Jessica really was. The court records. The fraud conviction. His face shifted from disbelief to anger to crushing disappointment. You're sure about this? He asked quietly. I have documentation. Police reports. Court transcripts. Everything. He was silent for a long time. She was going to move in with me next month. I was going to add her to my bank account so she could help manage my finances. My blood ran cold. Frank, please tell me you haven't given her any money yet. Just small amounts, a few hundred here and there for her therapy. For legal bills to clear her record. Jessica was already working him. Just like she'd worked me and Michael. What are you going to do? I asked. I'm going to confront her tonight. Frank, please be careful. Don't do it alone. Have a friend present or meet in a public place. That evening, Frank called me. She denied everything at first, he said. Called you a vindictive liar. But when I showed her the court documents you gave me, she broke down and confessed. Said she was desperate, that she needed money for her family. What family? I asked bitterly. Her marriage to my son ended 2 years ago. She said her parents, that they're in debt because of legal bills from her case. Even in confession, Jessica couldn't tell the full truth. Are you pressing charges? I asked. I don't know, Frank admitted. She only took about $800, but Eleanor. What scares me is how completely I believed her. If you hadn't warned me, I would have signed over access to my entire retirement account. Frank decided not to press charges, but he did file a report with the police documenting Jessica's attempt to defraud him. That alone was enough to violate her probation. 2 days later, I got a call from Detective Morrison, no relation to Frank, who'd handled the original case. Mrs. Davidson, he said, Jessica Stevens has been arrested for a probation violation and new fraud charges. Based on Mr. Morrison's complaint. She's claiming you orchestrated this to frame her. Detective, I replied evenly. I simply warned a potential victim about her criminal history. Is that illegal now? Not at all, he said. In fact, we appreciate citizens who help protect potential victims from known predators. Jessica's arrest made the local paper not front-page news, but visible enough that my neighbors who had believed her lies began to reconsider. Mrs. Chen showed up the next day with a basket of homemade cookies and a heartfelt apology. I should have known better than to believe gossip. Over my own experience with you, she said. Other neighbors followed suit. The graffiti was scrubbed off my gate, and several people even volunteered to help keep an eye on my property in case of more harassment. But the real test came when Michael visited that weekend. Mom, he began. Jessica called me from jail. She's furious about what happened with Frank Morrison. I'm sure she is. I said dryly. She wants me to testify that you've been harassing her, that you're trying to destroy her life. Out of revenge, my chest tightened. After everything we'd rebuilt, would my son really take her side again? And what did you tell her? I asked. I told her that you saved an innocent man from being conned, and that if she's still running scams on elderly victims, she deserves whatever happens to her. Relief washed through me. Thank you, I said quietly. He hesitated. Mom, I need you to know something. Jessica contacted me 6 months ago. She asked me to help her appeal her conviction. She said if we both testified that it was all a misunderstanding, we could get the charges dropped and then split whatever money we could get from you afterward. My heart sank, and I told her she was insane if she thought I'd ever help her hurt you again. That's when she started this campaign, spreading lies, trying to turn people against you. She figured if she couldn't get to your money through me, she'd try to isolate you instead. The depth of Jessica's manipulation still managed to stun me. Even after prison, after losing everything, she was scheming again. Determined to profit from my inheritance one way or another. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. He sighed. Because I was ashamed I'd ever been married to someone like her. And because I was afraid you'd think I was tempted by her offer, were you? He met my eyes. Not for a second. I've learned the difference between wanting money and needing self-respect. That evening, I sat on the porch watching the sun dip into the ocean. Harold's house had become more than just a sanctuary, it was a fortress. A place that protected me from people who mistook kindness for weakness. I thought about Jessica sitting in her jail cell, probably already planning her next con. Some people never learn. They see consequences as obstacles, not lessons. But I'd learned something too. Money doesn't corrupt people, it reveals them. Jessica had always been greedy and manipulative. Michael had always been weak, but redeemable. And I had always been stronger than I gave myself credit for. Tomorrow, I'd keep building the life Harold wanted for me. But tonight, I just wanted to breathe in the ocean air and enjoy the peace that came from knowing I could finally protect myself and others from predators who saw compassion as an invitation. 1 year later, I hosted a garden party to mark the 3rd anniversary of Harold's passing and of my inheritance. The guest list was small but meaningful, real friends I'd made, loyal neighbors, and Michael, who had slowly and sincerely earned his way back into my trust. The party also served a purpose Jessica could never have imagined. I'd invited Frank Morrison, Detective Morrison, Mrs. Chen, and others who had been touched by Jessica's deceit, not to gloat, but to create a quiet network of awareness. A community shield against people like her. It's amazing how many predators target seniors. Dr. Walsh was saying near the Rose Garden. Financial abuse is practically an epidemic. The key is communication, Detective Morrison added. If people had called Mrs. Davidson the moment Jessica approached them, this could have been stopped before it began. Double quotes. Mrs. Chen nodded firmly. We've started a neighborhood watch for scams. If someone new shows up asking for money or spreading stories about family drama, we fact-check before we believe anything. Michael found me by the punch bowl. Mom, he said, smiling, this is really something. You've turned a nightmare into education. Harold would have loved that. He always believed in turning problems into solutions, I said. And I think he'd be proud. Have you heard anything about Jessica's appeal? Michael asked. It was denied again, I told him. She's serving her full sentence this time, plus extra time for the fraud charges from Frank. For the first time in years, I felt true closure. Jessica was exactly where she belonged. And I, finally, was exactly where Harold had meant for me to be. Do you think she'll try again when she gets out? Michael asked. I thought about it seriously. Probably. But it'll be much harder for her now. Word travels fast in communities like ours and she's burned too many bridges. Does that worry you? Not anymore, I said. I've learned that the best defense against manipulators is transparency. The more openly we talk about these things, the harder it becomes for predators to operate. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Frank Morrison approached me, holding something small in his hand. Eleanor, I wanted to give you this, he said, handing me a neatly wrapped package. It's not much, but I wanted you to know how grateful I am. Inside was a beautiful silver picture frame with an engraving that read, To Eleanor Davidson, who saved more than my money, she saved my faith in human decency. Frank, this is lovely but unnecessary, I said. Touched. It's very necessary, he insisted. Do you realize what you did? You could have let Jessica take advantage of me. You could have minded your own business and avoided all the chaos that followed. But you didn't. You chose to protect a stranger. Mrs. Chen, hood overheard, stepped closer. That's what good people do, she said. They protect others, even when it costs them something. After everyone left, Michael and I sat on the porch, just as we had so many times over the past year. The night was calm, the ocean whispering softly in the distance. Mom, he said after a while, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you ever regret not just giving us some of the money from the beginning? I mean, if you'd shared the inheritance, maybe none of this would have happened. I considered his question carefully. Michael, if I'd given you money right away, what would you have learned? What would Jessica have learned? You both would have discovered that manipulating me worked and it wouldn't have stopped there. He frowned slightly. But maybe we would have been satisfied with just a little help. I looked at him. Do you really believe that? Jessica stole from Frank Morrison even after she failed to steal from me. She appealed her conviction twice. She tried to turn my neighbors against me. Does that sound like someone who would have been satisfied with partial success? He shook his head slowly. No, it doesn't. The inheritance wasn't the problem, Michael, I said gently. It was the test. It showed who people really were when they thought they could get away with anything. He hesitated. And who am I? What did the test reveal about me? That you're someone who can learn from mistakes, I said. Someone who can choose growth over resentment. Someone who can rebuild trust not with words, but with actions. We sat in comfortable silence after that, watching the waves crash against the shore. The ocean was eternal, patient, powerful. It reminded me that some things endure while others simply wash away. I have something to tell you, I said finally. I've been working with Mr. Patterson on a new will. Michael tensed slightly. Oh, I'm leaving everything to charity, I said. The house will become a refuge for seniors who've been financially abused by family members. And the rest of the money will fund legal aid for elderly victims of fraud. He was quiet for a long moment, then smiled softly. That's perfect, Mom, really perfect. You're not disappointed? I'm proud, he said. This inheritance caused nothing but pain for our family. Turning it into something good makes sense. There is one exception, I added. I'm leaving you Harold's collection of first edition books not because they're valuable, but because you used to love reading with me when you were little. I want you to remember the good parts of our relationship. Michael's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Mom. That means more to me than any amount of money ever could. Later that night, as I prepared for bed in Harold's beautiful house, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here 3 years ago. I'd been an ordinary widow living quietly on my pension. Then came the inheritance, the betrayal, the legal battles, and finally, peace. Harold had been right. The money gave me freedom, but not the kind I expected. It freed me from the obligation to tolerate poor treatment from those I loved. It freed me from choosing peace over self-respect. And most of all, it freed me to realize that I was far stronger than I ever believed. Tomorrow, I'd keep working to turn my painful experience into something that helps others. But tonight, I was simply grateful for the lessons, the growth, and the clarity. That true wealth isn't about money. It's about having the wisdom to use whatever power you have to protect yourself and others from those who mistake kindness for weakness. The inheritance had tested everyone in my life. Some failed spectacularly. Others surprised me with their integrity. But the person who learned the most was me. I learned that being kind doesn't mean being naive. That forgiveness doesn't mean accepting abuse. And that sometimes the best way to love someone is to refuse to enable their worst impulses. As I drifted off to sleep in my sanctuary by the sea, I whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude to Harold, not just for the inheritance, but for the education it brought me. It taught me about the true nature of people and the real meaning of family. Money had stripped away pretenses and revealed who everyone truly was. And for the first time in my life, I'd learned to trust what I saw instead of what I hoped to see. The woman who'd once been pushed down the stairs by her daughter-in-law was gone forever. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and far more cautious about who she allowed into her circle of trust. The inheritance had cost me a son, but it had given me a community. It had taken away my illusions and replaced them with truth. And in the end, that truth, the clarity, the strength, the peace was the most valuable gift of all. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.